Why do people print their mixes to a 2-track? So for today's video, we're going to talk about why people tend to print to a 2-track when they're mixing music. And this topic was actually brought up on my Patreon page months ago, and we had a whole conversation about it there. It was a ton of fun. If you want to join the Patreon, it's patreon.com/CatoNoise. And I thought it would be a good topic for a video as well. So we can talk a little bit about why people tend to do this. And then in the next video, next week, we're going to talk about how to actually do it. I'm going to actually show you how to do it. But this is one of those topics in audio engineering where there's actually a good amount of debate about it. Professional engineers tend to have a variety of answers about this topic. So it's not like all professionals are doing it any one way, right? So there is some debate about it, and we're going to talk about that today. But before we get started, I just want to remind you, please subscribe to my channel. It helps keep the channel independent. It helps keep the channel going. So if you appreciate these videos, if you like these videos, hit that subscribe button for me. So I have this beat together that I'm going to use for our example in the next video. But basically the idea of printing to a 2-track, it's you print to a stereo track. So let me do Command-Shift-N, and I'm just going to create a stereo audio track. But the idea would be that instead of going File, Bounce to Disk, and bouncing it externally into my Bounced Files folder, I would take this beat, which this is just an example that I threw together for this video. I use Splice samples. Thanks, Splice. Splice is now integrated in Pro Tools, made it super quick, super easy. So the idea is that I would take these and I would route them all out to a stereo audio track and print it within my session before then removing the file from my session. So you'd have something like this where you have all your tracks with your music, and then you might have like mix version 1 or what have you. So the idea is that once you've bounced to 2-track, you would have a stereo track with the whole stereo mix on it within your session instead of bouncing it externally out of the session. So I'll show you how to do this with more detail in the next video. We'll talk about some actual details about how to do it well, how to do it quickly, how to do it efficiently. But for now, let's talk about the why behind it. So I feel like this was more of a thing years ago. And the reason was because for a while, it did make a lot more sense to do this, because if you bounced internally, it would have a different quality than if you bounced externally. And my understanding is that the reason for this quality difference had to do with some details about how it was converted. Nowadays, a lot of people are working entirely in the box, though. So for example, if you're working entirely in the box, then this conversion stuff might not even come into play. So that's why a lot of people that advocate for this print to 2-track method, they will say that unless you're treating the signal with external gear, with external hardware, you're going outside of the box, then there's no point in doing this. But I believe dither will come into play even if you are mixing within the box. So that's something to keep in mind. I've also, while reading up about this, I've found that some people argue that there is a difference between bouncing in real time versus bouncing in faster than real time, bouncing offline, right? I personally don't worry about this because I do bounce in real time. I choose not to bounce offline most of the time, and that's because I am running through hardware, running through external gear. So nowadays, some engineers will bounce to 2-track. They will bounce to 2-track within their session, and some people ignore it completely. They just do the bounce to disk function. And so for a lot of people that are bouncing to disk, the argument is that the issue that was the reason for doing the internal bounce to begin with has been resolved. It was resolved years ago, so it's not something you have to worry about anymore, and so you might as well just use the bounce to disk function. That's the argument for that side. But with that said, there are some arguments to still bounce internally to a 2-track. So for example, you can view the waveform as it's created, and it forces you to bounce in real time, both of which are good for quality control. And you can also make adjustments in real time if you're using this approach. So you can do more of the old school live mixing on a soundboard kind of approach as you go, which is kind of fun. And it can also be a good way to quickly compare multiple mix versions within your session while you're working. So if you want to do like a version A and version B for your mix, you can quickly both see those and hear those and compare them very, very quickly if you use this approach. You don't have to just have this one track. You can have multiple mix versions, right? I kind of alluded to that with my mix version 1 here. You could have another one that you do later that's mix version 2, for example. So you can quickly A/B test different mixes. And along similar lines, you can easily punch in if you're doing this way. So for example, if you want to make a change that's only a change for the chorus, you can quickly punch in and re-record just the chorus on your mix version. And so that can allow you to make changes a bit faster, which can be a big benefit. And similar concept, but slightly different workflow. If you want to, for example, take the verses from version 1 and the choruses from version 2 later, you can combine different mix versions to get exactly where you want to get if you're working this way. So these are the reasons why a lot of people want to work this way and choose to work this way, right? Some people also worry about plugins behaving differently during a bounce versus while you're actually playing back within your software, your DAW. So that is another reason why people will sometimes choose to print their mix instead of bouncing their mix. So plugins potentially behaving differently is a reason why some people will choose to print internally within their DAW. And this is kind of a side note, but some people will choose to do this kind of a workflow to create stems within their DAW as well. So, I'm not necessarily advocating for this method right now. I personally don't do this method. I like to bounce in real time. That's what I tend to do. I find that easier. So whether you're using this technique or not, I think it's good to know the pros and cons for why people tend to choose this method or choose an alternate method, right? And I think whether you're using this method or not, it's also really important to still focus on gain staging and having proper gain staging going into the mix print, no matter how you do it. So anyway, this bounce to 2-track system, this bounce to 2-track method is one of those things that technically arose because of technical difficulties, right? It arose because of a limitation of the technology. And so now a lot of people still use this technique. And I think it's so fascinating that despite the fact that this original technical issue, the original reason for why this technique arose, even though that's gone now, a lot of people still use this technique. And there are various reasons why they do. And those are legit reasons. But I think it's so fascinating that there are so many things like this in audio engineering and music production history where the technique, the whatever that is often an artistic decision, even it arose because of a limitation in the technology. And I think that's so fascinating. It's like, the history of pan knobs is like that, right? A lot of people, old school mixers will do 0, 45, or, nothing, or 100, right? And they don't do any in between pan options. And that originally was a limitation of the technology. The pan knobs only had those options. They didn't have the in between, right? So I think it's really fascinating how technology ends up shaping the art. So anyway, for better or for worse, this is still very much a debate among engineers, and I think it's fascinating. And this is kind of a side note, kind of unrelated to this topic, but within the original conversation that we had on Patreon about this topic, there was also a question about the difference between printing to a 2-track and going through your master fader and out the bounce, right? And what are the differences there? And the other big difference, besides just the bounce to disk function versus staying internally within the system, is the way that the master fader functions in terms of plugins. So you can add plugins to your mix, right? And then, you're doing a bit of a master there, and you can do that on your audio track. You can also do it on the master fader, right? And if you're doing that, it's good to keep in mind that with an audio track, if you take down the volume here, you take down that volume, and that's also if I do Command equals and I switch to my mix window, you can see it's right here. If you adjust this volume fader, this is happening after the plugins. And the big difference between printing to an audio track and running through the master fader is that when you bring down the volume on the master fader, that is before the plugins. So that's going to affect the level going into the plugins, whereas on this way of doing things, it's going to affect the level going out of the plugins, after the plugins. So I hope that makes sense. Let me know if it doesn't in the comments below. I think that's about everything I wanted to cover in this video. For the next video, we're going to be talking about how to do this print to 2-track technique, including some tips and tricks to make your workflow a little bit better, a little bit more efficient. And if you look at my channel and you don't see that video out yet, then it might be accessible to my Patreon patrons only until the next week, right? So if you see this video right when it comes out, you might see that that video is not public yet. So please feel free to join the Patreon if you want to see it right now. It's patreon.com/KatoNoise, and my patrons get some early release videos, additional content. We have a Discord server we're hanging out on. We have a book club on the Discord server. That's one of my favorite things. And other than that, I come out with new videos every Wednesday, and thank you so much for hanging out. Okay. All right, so what's new? Oh, I saw the symphony playing alongside Jurassic. I'm so excited, I can't speak. I saw the symphony playing alongside Jurassic Park over the weekend. So it was at the Rady Shell, which is this newer venue in San Diego. It's really cool. Maybe I'll put a photo of it on the screen or something. And what they do is they get access to the film, and they play the film, and then the symphony plays alongside. So it's basically like the symphony is the soundtrack. And so the version of the film that they get, they have removed the music from the film, and you still hear the dialogue and sound effects and everything. And then the music, the symphony is doing the music. And it was so flipping cool. It was so much fun. And there are points where like the symphony overcame the dialogue, and it was very much the focus was on the music. And I loved it. And it was so much fun. And I love Jurassic Park, so I'm biased going into it. But I did think it was interesting because there were some people at the end who got up and left as soon as the credits started. I was like, the symphony still has like 3 more songs to play, or 1 more. I don't know how many songs it is. The symphony is still playing during the credits. And it's just kind of funny. It's like, that's when you find out who's there for the symphony and who's there for the movie. And I don't know. It's like, whether you get up and leave, it's totally fine. I chose to sit and stay because I was also there for the symphony. But I thought it was interesting that some people stood up and then started talking. And I was like, some of us are still here, are still watching the performance. If like, get up and leave if you're done. But like, you get up and start talking while people are still listening to the symphony play. I was surprised at how many people did that. It was like a big portion of the audience. I'm like, what are we doing, guys? Anyway, that's my little thing. I don't know. I hope you're doing well, and I'll talk to you soon.